If you're staying on the West Bank here in Luxor and you want to make your way over here to the East Bank to go to Luxor Temple, Karnak Temple, Luxor Museum, whatever it is on this side. So my suggestion, consider taking the private ferry, offering a fair price. This 50 pounds that I paid, I gave a tip. This 50 pounds that I paid, but you're not obligated to give any tips. That 50 pounds is $1. I saved so much time and I probably saved money. When you come into the Luxor Temple, you'll see this little area here where you can relax, sit under the trees, have a drink of your choice. But I'll offer you a little bit of advice. When you come here, buy your snacks, your water, your whatever, these drinks that you want, acquire them before you come in. If you get overcharged on the street, you're overcharged maybe 100%. But if you're overcharged here, you're overcharged by 1,000%. All right, we are on the Avenue of the Sphinx. The walkway, or I guess, yeah, walkway between the Karnak Temple to the north and here to the south, Luxor Temple. So today we're going to be talking about this temple, Ipit-Lisit. And one thing I want to point out, these are called andro-sphinx, andro for human, and sphinx as in the lion body. You can see the tail there. But one thing you notice about all of these, the eyes were kind of carved out. These things were effaced big time. You can tell that was a big broad nose and lips. But all of this just in the asp, look at that. Whoever it is really tried to undo it. But this road is built as a part of the Apit festival. It flooded here, and this was a time of celebration. If you watched any of my videos, watch the one before this, which is on Ethiopia and the Nile. You know, the Nile was essentially the fruit bearer, metaphorically speaking, and literally, I guess, for the ancient Egyptians. And they celebrated this. They knew that for them to have a fruitful harvest, a fruitful bounty, they needed to make the gods happy. There's a saying that the cult of Amen had, which was, Amen blesses those who pleases the gods. Beyond the king, pleasing the god was extremely important. Now, what I'm walking up on here is a bark, because on this road, what took place during the temple, there would be a bark. They envisioned that the bark would be like this. And one would be for Amen, one would be for his complement, Mut, and the third would be for their son, Khonsu. And when we go inside, you'll see the shrines dedicated to these three, but that's called the Theban Triad, right? The Theban Triad. Now, these andro-sphinx, composite man and lion, what do they symbolize? Now, I think it's pretty simple to say, easy to say, that the ram heads down there that you will see, and this goes on for 2.7 kilometers. This is a good ways down to get to the Karnak Temple. But what do these symbolize? Well, obviously the ram, this symbolizes Amen. The Almighty, the Most High, predominant way of presenting the Most High during the New Kingdom and throughout most of the Middle Kingdom as well. But what I find interesting about Khnum, and I'll get into that as we go into the temple, is that Khnum's place as being presented as the Almighty, the Most High, exists long before Ramses. And people who take my tour, you see an Elephantine, 3rd dynasty, 4th dynasty, very early in the Old Kingdom, Khnum, right? Khnum, which is the Almighty, the Most High, presented with the ram head. But why the human? Why the human head? Different ways of explaining this. One is that name is pronounced Nectanebo, 30th dynasty. He built 800 of these. And I think he's hearkening back to the past. You always see this from the Kemetic people. When they're in a challenging situation, they always rely on their history, and they rely on their religion, their cosmology. So I think Nectanebo was hearkening back, but I do think that these more so reflect the potential of man, right? The power of man, and also the strength of a lion, the power of a lion. Now, they didn't have many lions. That lets you know that the zoo types existed long before the nations that we call Kemet. Now, the temple of the avenue sphinxes over there that I just pointed out to you, work on that was started by Hatshepsut, and other folks helped to build. Amenhotep III, Tut, King Tut, Tutankhamun, Ramses II, and of course, lastly, Nectanebo, who I mentioned, of the 3rd dynasty. So mostly 18th dynasty, 19th dynasty, 25th dynasty on the inside, in the inside of the temple, but related specifically to the Avenue Sphinx, you're looking at 18th, 19th, 30th dynasty primarily. Now over here, this temple, Ipit Asit, Southern Apit, is what this name means, and it is built parallel to the Nile River, which is uncommon because usually temples are built at a 90 degree angle to the Nile. But I believe it's this way because it was built as somewhat of an auxiliary to part of the Karnak Temple, which this avenue of the Sphinx goes directly to inside the Karnak Temple. And this Apit festival that I mentioned, ultimately, in the end, it lasted for 30 days. Ramses extended it to last an entire month. But I'll point out some of the things that come to mind and that I think are important about this particular temple. For one, you can see on the end how it's tapered there. But what does that represent? It represents the primordial mound, just like the pyramids do. But on their mind is constantly their origins, the primordial mound. Like I said, that's what the pyramids represent, and that is why this pylon is tapered like that, like this, because this is what it represents. Now, on several of these images, I don't know how clear it is, but several of these, okay, you can see Ramses II, who built this, Ramses II in his chariot, battling against the Hittites in the battle of Kadesh. Now, the Battle of Kadesh is important. What came from it was a treaty, but there's a poem called the Poem of Pentor. And in this poem, Ramses talks about how Amen was there for him and how his valor and battle resulted in him living despite being ambushed and being with only one of 4 squadrons. And right here is that actual poem, the Poem of Pentor, right here on the wall. You can see me pointing right here on the wall. I get asked all the time, what does the left leg forward mean? So the left leg forward means it's militaristic. It means that this person is on the move, on the march, on the verge of, whooping some people. And it is somewhat intimidating, I would say. And he has the crown, it's hard to tell, but you can see it's the crown of Upper Egypt and the crown of Lower Egypt, both the white and the red on his head. The baboons. Why the baboons? What's up, my brother? The baboons are known for acknowledging the sun, right? Barking at the sun, almost as if they're praising the sun. And when you see 4 like this in general, this means around the world, the 4 cardinal directions, north, south, east, and west. All right, so the Tekken obelisk or Tekken, the ancient Kemetic people refer to this as Tekken, plural Tekkenu. In this name, Tekken, it means to pierce, as in pierce the sky. There's so much, and I'm aiming it in this direction because usually there are 2 before the temple. And this one on this side is in France, has been sent there since 1833, 1835, somewhere around that time. They initially were going to take boat, but just to get the first one over there cost a ton of money. What would be today in the vicinity of 19 million. So now, one of the important symbols you will always see is the scimitar. Right? You can see the tying together, the papyrus and the lotus on the other side, symboling Lower Egypt, Lower Kemet, and Upper Kemet. And this concept together, Samatawi, the coming together of the 2 lands. Now, the most people would say that on both sides is Hapi, the god that embodied the Nile River. And that may be true, but the Samatawi concept has more than one meaning. It could be the higher self and the lower self. I've heard the battle between Set and Heru described as the Samatawi concept, right? The Heru, the ethereal man, the high-minded, disciplined man, versus Set, who is valorous in his own right, but undisciplined and jealous. So these 2 personalities have to be balanced to create the whole man, which I believe it was several of the kings. Pedestal worship Set. Our understanding of Set, I strongly believe, is different from their understanding of Set. Now, Ramses II, very talented man in more than one area, talented warrior, and a talented propagandist. And the reason why I say that, here you can see he is documenting the foreigners that he has vanquished. And you'll see this throughout Egypt, and areas that he himself built, and also the monuments that he usurped, which I'll get into. In various places, you'll see inscriptions for the 25th dynasty. Now, this is the first pylon that Ramses II built, but up top here it's kind of difficult to see. Taharka left his mark of an inscription here on the temple. That's the 25th dynasty. I know once you pass this first pylon, to me, the most overlooked part of this entire temple are these three shrines to the right when you walk in. This shrine here in the middle for Amen. This shrine to our left, but to Amen's right, is Mut. And then over on this side to our far right, temple to Khonsu, their offspring. Look at here. Can you see that? Look at that beak. That's Jehudi. You can see him with this hand writing. This is Jehuti, the personification of knowledge, wisdom, writing. He has a complement by the name of Seshat. I think we'll see her later in this temple. He's telling the story. And then Ramses making his offering to Amen. You can see the plume there on the head. The solar bark, the bark that I showed you outside, it would be here. And of course, again, we see Ramses making his offering to Amen. Mut. The mindset of the Kemetic people, very, very clear. They were far from misogynist. They definitely acknowledged feminine energy in their conceptualization, in their cosmology. Here we see Ramses II. He's making his offering, but he's making his offering to Mut. This area, this courtyard, our Great Court, as it's sometimes called, built by Ramses II. And here you can see his daughters. And to my understanding, he had nearly 100 children. However, I was talking to some Egyptologists over on the West Bank, and they were telling me that they found tombs of people that could be children of Ramses, which means it could be that. And long and short of it was, he thought that there was a possibility that there could be more children, but he was unsure. But what I just showed you here are several of his daughters, leading to his daughter Bentana, who you see here. I should mention about this great court that Ramses built. Many of the scenes in this court relate to the actual Apep festival. And here's what the entrance outside looked like in that time. Here you can see Ramses' helmet of the north and the south. I don't know how clear that is, but there's one taken. And outside, the pylons on each side, on each pylon out front, has little squares in it, and those are for the flags. But these flags have symbolic meaning for the Neteru, who are presented by flags. So the flags flying outside, meaning this place is protected by the gods. Here we have him seated again, as you can see outside. Here is the Tekken on the other side. And this procession is his children. Now, Ramses outlived a good number of his children. Ptah, the 13th kid, son, became king. I believe this would be Ptah, the 13th child of Ramses II, that became king. Right, still here in the Ramses court, or the Great Court. It is reputed that Ramses himself built these over on this side and usurped these from Amenhotep III. Which makes sense, because now we're getting into the area that Amenhotep himself built. And Ramses was always certain to show his conquest. And this symbol here at the bottom, this one, that is the symbol for, that's the hieroglyph for foreign land. And you can look at the phenotype of these people. Obviously Asian or European. But when we come over here, see these people. Also, you can see the foreign land symbol. These people appear to have more of an African phenotype. Or you're on the other side. Same thing. Asiatic being taken captive. And I should mention, ancient Egypt didn't have slaves in the way that modern people think about it. They did have war captives, but not chattel slavery. And now the people who first came up with that were the Jews. I say Jew, not Hebrew. And that was started by a man named Josephus, who was looking to prove the antiquity of the Jews, but he took several liberties. Essentially, he lied. In regard to the ancient Kemetic people, there have been a billion lies told about these people in their history. All right, and I want to point this out. Jehuti again, with his beak, you'll see that's from the ibis bird, which you will see the higher up on the, now you go in Egypt, the greater the likelihood you'll see that bird on the water there as well. And this is important. That's woman with the 7-leaf clover. You also see her with the pen in her hand. That is Seshat, the complement of this god, Jehuti. So as I've stated so far, the Apep festival was very festive, hence the name Apep festival. On the wall, in the various scenes of the Apep festival, you'll see cows being sacrificed. You see lots of different types of fowl, oranges, dates. Interestingly enough, these are the same foods that you see on the street today in Egypt. So obviously the Arabs adopted many of the food ways in Egypt. This is a scene from the Apit festival. You can see dancers here, very flexible women. Here are vocalists, 4 of them. Again, when you see the 4, this represents the whole of the world. And these are instruments, systems. I'm at the entrance of the colonnade, the 7 large columns on each side. The walls used to go all the way up to the top. There's some statues here that are quite interesting. Here's King Tut, and you can see his face there. Give you a good idea of what he looked like. Get a little closer, you can see, man, those braids of hers on fleek. This is how you would expect a queen to look. Very well adorned. Beautiful, nicely done hair. Now on this side, quite interesting to see. This is Amen and Mut. But what's interesting about this, you can see Amen is presented with the face there of Tut. Now this makes sense. Just think about who Tut's dad was. Akhenaten. And Tut wanted to bring things back to the worship of Amen. But I know that his propaganda is that he is presented here. Amen is presented here with the face of Tut. And this is the complement of Amen, who is Mut. But as I walk over here, what would be the reason? Why would Tut do that? His father was not appreciated. The borders were being attacked. His father, there were some important details that he did not pay close attention to. So when he died, eventually, not long after, actually during Tut's reign, who became king, I believe someone served for maybe a year or 2, and then Tut became king. And he wanted to put himself back in good standing with Amen or with the cult of Amen. And as time proceeds throughout the New Kingdom, the two starts to become synonymous. Frankly, the cult, the priest of Amen, became extremely powerful throughout the years, all the way throughout the various years of the 20th dynasty, throughout all of the various Ramses that came to power. So Tut presented there his face with the plume of Amen, right? So this is a good way to send a message. I'm with Amen, I've served Amen, I am making Amen and the gods happy. Because here, the Holy of Holies, this increasingly high ground symbolizes ultimately arriving at the primeval mound. This is the peristyle hall. Initially, there were a huge number of these, like 60. But over the years, you know, Syrians, everybody came through here. That's why this looks like it does now. But to my understanding, you see the papyri in the, well, you see the columns in the colonnade versus the columns here. So why the difference in the design? The papyri in the colonnade, now the colonnade was closed. You can see up top, that was closed off. There were walls around it, not much light. And this was the actual entrance to this area, the Sun Court, or Amenhotep Court. Those columns represent closed papyri. This design represents an open papyri. And I'll get closer so you can see the difference in the design. So you keep in mind Christianity's created in Egypt. And the initially Rome practiced a more open form of Christianity, and eventually they declined into the current form of Christianity and Catholicism. But in this time, they painted over the sultans, over the kings, and they painted these images of the Romans. Now, the Romans emperors wanted to take the place of the pharaoh, and you'll notice this throughout history. The Ptolemies, the Romans, all of these people, they don't want to destroy the pharaonic rule. They want to place themselves in the pharaonic rule. They don't want to do away with Kemet. They want to rule Kemet. Even Napoleon himself thought about staying in Egypt. With the sunken relief is built by Alexander. Here's his name in the cartouche. You can see it very clear. Alexander. Very distinct. Alexander. Very, very clear. This is written very, very clearly. So what are we seeing here? We're seeing this is the god Amen, and here is Alexander. Alexander wearing the war helmet of the Caprice. Like I said, they want to be like the Egyptians. And here he is. This means to give. He's been given the seed. The seed. He's been given the seed to give him vitality, to give him power. Now, you can see that it's been effaced here. But they were not ashamed of nudity. They were not ashamed of sex. And the vitality, the penis here, which the Tekken outside, the obelisk, is symbolic for a penis. Like I said, it represents strength, vitality, coming from Amen, coming to Alexander. All right, so a little bit of information about how the Egyptologists and archaeologists make sense of these things. This is built for Alexander. But up above are stones for other people, like Amenhotep III. So they took stones that were used for one thing and used them for something else. And this gives the archaeologists information that they need. It's like a big puzzle. So it kind of helps with the chronology and the overall understanding of the timeline and what may have been going on when the temples were created. All right, so now we are in the divine birth room of Amenhotep III. Here, what do we have here? Not only Amenhotep III, but Amenhotep and his Ka being blessed, given life by the goddess of maternalism, Het Peru, who many know as Hathor. And here, again, we see Amen represented with the ram head, and I'll get back into the ram head once I leave this section. But if you go up, that's his mother. His mother here on the right, being impregnated by Amen. This is a divine birth scene, just like what Hatshepsut did. Now, let's get to the context of it all. Why would Amenhotep need a divine birth? You claim a divine birth when necessary, like Hatshepsut. She usurped from her brother Tutmos III, presented herself as the divine offspring of Amen, immaculate conception. Now, Hatshepsut may have been the first to do this, but Amenhotep III saw the necessity of doing this. Why? Because his mother here that you see, Mutawaya was Syrian wife, lesser known wife of Tutmos IV, which necessitated the need for the divine birth of Amenhotep III. Now, supposedly in the beginning, this temple was a temple for men. Men is the deity that you see that has the powerful erection and the folklore. He got all of the women pregnant when the men were off to war. And consequently, they chopped off one of his legs. This guy. What's up, buddy? Salaam. And so men, we can say God of virility, right? But you'll always hear this term, Amen men, or men Amen, right? This is the two gods coming together. So we have initially this temple built for men. Then we have, you see the ram head, also Amen, but related to the ancient god from the old kingdom, Khnum, that you'll see if you visit Elephantine, or if you visit Kemet with me, you'll certainly see the Khnum temple. So you see Amen, Khnum, Ra. Who did I leave out? Amen, Khnum, Ra. Oh, and men. All presented in different times as one. My conclusion is that the cult of Amen, they just simply usurped all of the deities. And one of the things that I read was that by the time we get deep into the New Kingdom, in the 11th dynasty, the Manchu kings make a lot of progress towards reuniting Kemet, reuniting the people, reuniting the culture. And after the Manchus, you have the Intefs and the Manchus of the 11th dynasty. After that, when we get into the 12th dynasty, then you get the rise of the Amen cult under Amenemhat. And Amen, the cult of Amen, continues to grow, continues to be successful. The emergence and proliferation of Amen as a supreme deity was alongside the rise of Waset. And that is how Amen eventually became the Almighty Most High. And I think that when we say, us Christians, when we say amen, I think it is a continuation of Amen, of the God, worship of the God Amen. So a lot of reasons to believe that, a lot of reasons why I say that, but I'll just kind of leave it there. But my overall thought about the Luxor Temple, Amenhotep III is more influential than we give him credit for. We see the Colossi of Mignon, but his temple was probably magnificent, but it doesn't exist anymore. So the impact of Amenhotep III, that's one of the major things that is reflected to me in this temple. Ramses II, just an overall, all around badass, politically adroit, highly successful with propaganda successful in battle. Tut used this opportunity to redeem himself, right? At least in the eyes of the priesthood and the multitudes of people, probably. So he paid homage to Amen in this temple, even though his dad kind of set him up for failure. Not to say that Akhenaten did not have a good point, because Akhenaten, I believe, probably had a lot of foresight. As you can see in the 20th dynasty and so forth, you can see just how corrupt the cult of Amen had become. So he had some foresight, even though things didn't work out for him. Other things, you can see that the Romans and the Greeks, like right over there is a temple to Serapis. I showed you the Romans plastering, painting themselves on the wall inside. The ancients, the Greeks, the Romans, up until the 5th century Common Era, they wanted to change out of their clothes into the clothes of the Pharaoh. They wanted to be like the Egyptians, and that did not end until the 5th century Common Era, right? About a little bit before 500 AD. In the last temple that the Kemetic people used to worship is Philae down in Aswan. I'll show it to you if you come to Egypt with me. I would say this is the story of this temple is the rise of Amen. The rise of Amen. I see that as the predominant thing as related to this temple. And another thing, wow, this temple was desecrated very badly, just like most of the monuments. But if you read through the 18th century, late 18th century people who came from France and the people from Prussia and different places in the world came in the 19th century. I don't like that they packed everything off and took it to their museums, but if you listen to them, the people who were here were destroying everything and had no consideration for any of it. And that I strongly believe. This temple, like I said, was under the ground, under dirt, up until 100 years ago. Nothing existed but that Muslim temple on the inside. But as time moved on and they realized how much tourist dollars could be made from this, thus came along their interest in this, but they wouldn't dare have any of this symbology in their home. Anyway, just a brief lesson. I hope it was beneficial to you. If you ever come to Kemet, if you ever come to Egypt, you definitely want to make your way to this temple. Come with me, join the Kemet 101 tour. Also, I organize a tour to the Giza Plateau. So if you decide you want to visit the Giza Plateau, then send me a letter, well, you'll see the link in the description box, and you'll also see an email there in the description box.